Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am mentally handicapped and I'm running a podcast. My name is Andy Van Beber. Welcome to the Voice of Reason podcast. Yes, we are extremely late getting on tonight because I don't know how to run a podcast without intelligent people like Travis surrounding me. So, you know, anyway,
I know nothing about computers setting up the recording stuff. We are looking for a digital wizard like a Jamie. We can't pay you. It'd
nope.
be completely voluntary.
No, there's no pay involved. So we're
Trying
all
to be in Pike County.
Yeah, we're
Make
only
it work.
well, geez, we're only 40 minutes late, which isn't bad. So don't be upset if we don't go the full hour tonight because we only have jobs and everything, but we're committed. Dadgummit, we're committed to the show. We're committed to
We're
the show.
committed. Your boy's got to be up at 3 a.m. tomorrow, but
That's
hey,
right.
I'm still here.
I've got
I'm
to be up
still
at
here.
4. I've got to be up at 4 a.m. So I'm with you. I got to do substitute bus driving tomorrow. Haven't done it in over a month. So by golly, run kids off the road while I'm falling asleep behind the wheel. We're ready to go.
Just
Welcome
get
to
you one
Voice
of
of
them Bang
Reason.
energies.
Yeah, I know. Welcome to the Voice of Reason. My name is Andy Van Beber, joined as always by Travis Kirkendall. Our friend Sean Phillips is on base. Is this his first time serving in California, I guess?
I thought he already went to a drill already.
I don't know if but our buddy Sean is at drill tonight. And so what you
Yeah.
see before you are two handsome men, not quite as handsome as Sean Phillips, but hey, what can we say? Travis, how was Thanksgiving?
Thanksgiving was good. We actually were with my family the week prior, for my mom's side. I didn't get to see my dad's side of the family, unfortunately. And then her father came over for dinner, and then her grandma from Venezuela is here.
Oh, that's
And I got
fantastic.
to meet her. Yeah,
Yeah,
92 years old.
how old?
And
92.
92. And I mean, right. I mean, well, it's really, really cool. Like, it's weird to say this because like I don't speak Spanish, but like obviously my wife translates for me when I talk with her,
Uh-huh.
and it is one of the coolest. Like how many people? And for me, it's really cool. I don't think I've ever spoken to anybody over the age of like I would say upper 80s that like didn't have like Alzheimer's or dementia. And
She's
I'm just speaking facts. Like I haven't had that opportunity, and it is so cool. Like it
just
is to
yeah,
meet someone who's lived that life and like
that
can
long, yeah.
tell those stories and like has a memory like that. It is
So
just
that's
really, really
awesome.
neat.
So you got to
And she
connect.
cooks phenomenal. Oh my God.
I was going to say, back to the gym big time then, or is that what we're going to be doing this week?
Oh yeah, big time. Well, I've been trying to. It's this has been such a crazy week. I've been
Uh,
working up in 2 hours up in Wisconsin, and it's just been a lot of stuff going on right now. But we're
that is
still getting the
fantastic.
gym time in for sure.
Yeah. Well, we had
How about you? How was your
yeah,
Thanksgiving?
Janine's brother came in from Chicago, from Naperville area, and we had a great time. I went nowhere and did nothing. Actually, I went to three places. I took Briley to basketball practice, her ortho appointment, and we went to church. Rest of the time, totally rested, totally, you know, on the couch, and
Nice.
it was good though. We had a great time, and getting into the final stretch of basketball season, which running like a chicken with my head cut off, which has been really, uh, it's been crazy. But no, I will say this though: we're able to run and we're able to go out and about though. Isn't that's the positive thing, right? We're able to
Yeah,
get
it's the beauty of living in the US of A in 2022 as opposed to
other places.
places such as China,
Yeah,
which may or may not be what we're discussing tonight. It is what we're discussing tonight.
yeah. So what we're looking at tonight, and this has quietly been sneaking underneath the radar. If you haven't been following what's going on in China, so we're obviously on the Omicron variant. If you haven't had it yet, I have experienced it personally back in September. Had the Omicron variant, lasted about it I had a fever for about 48 hours. After about 96 hours, I was about back to myself. But lucky for us, we have the 3 day weekend. So I really started feeling like crap on like a Friday at school. We tested positive that Friday night, and by Monday evening, I was back pretty much to my normal. I'm actually, when I mentioned I'm doing substitute bus driving tomorrow, one of our bus drivers is out with it. But she says, as long it doesn't last that long. But Travis, why don't you fill us in on what's going on, what the situation is in China, what they're trying to do right now?
So China is doing lockdowns. I know we all remember
Oh
lockdowns
yes,
here. It was a great time in the US and the world. There's been mass lockdowns going on and a lot of protesting, lots of protesting going on. And from what I was reading, a lot of these protests sparked from an incident that happened in an apartment building. I forget what region, but apparently there was a fire that broke out. And first responders were very late in getting there due to some of these lockdowns. I guess it impacted their response time. And
I
to my
lost.
knowledge, I don't have the article in front of me, but people died from it, and a lot of people were injured from it, and it caused people to start protesting against the lockdowns that were happening. And it's again, China's doing this crazy zero COVID policy where it's just everything is shut down until we get the numbers under control, which
Is also
I think
bogus.
it's obvious now. If you look back at statistically, I think the lockdowns were just a terrible idea. They did not, what was the quote they said something to the something to curb what was that?
Flatten curve.
Flatten the curve, which I think if you look back, you realize that was just an absolute nightmare. It
So
may or may not have. Well, go ahead and get what you were going
I
to
was
say.
going to say, the numbers we came up with are that we were finding out. So China's
Oh yeah,
under their new Omicron, this variant that they have. So roughly the population of China is around 1.3 billion. From the
I get
start,
that.
okay, go ahead and give us those numbers then.
Okay, so this is like recent as of the 28th, like these numbers. China's population is 1,452,819,713. COVID deaths as of November 28th, and this is like pulling from like the CDC, the World Health Organization. It was like a collective 5,232 deaths. We did the math, and
Yep,
again, we may be
double checked it. Yep.
we may be a zero off on this. We were both like questioning each other before the show. There might be a zero off, but we're looking at 0.000036%.
Hmm.
That is what's causing the country to go completely locked down. And even the numbers of people that are like have COVID, from what I was reading, there was like what were you talking before the show? There's like what article said something like 40,000 something cases
Hmm.
that they had reported.
So
And again, even that number, if we're looking at again 1,452,000, et cetera,
so this is
absolutely
some of the things that are going on, and I'll just read this. This was 2 days ago on BBC News. So protesters are calling for these rules to be eased, even though China is seeing a surge in cases, not deaths, cases. So the new what this China COVID zero policy is. Okay, so local authorities. This is going to sound eerily familiar. Local authorities must impose strict lockdowns, even if only a handful of COVID cases are found. Mass testing is carried out in places where cases have been reported. People with COVID are isolated at home or placed under quarantine at government facilities. And Travis and I will talk about that in a second. Businesses or schools are closed in lockdown areas. Shops must also close except for those selling food. Lockdowns last until no new infections are reported. Tens of millions of people have been living in some kind of lockdown. Some local authorities have taken extreme measures such as forcing workers to sleep inside the factories so they can work while quarantined. Earlier this month, workers at the Foxconn factory in Jingzhou which makes iPhones staged a mass breakout because of fears they would be shut inside. In August, shoppers in an IKEA store in Shanghai forced their way out through the doors to escape it being locked down inside. Okay, this is what's been going on. Isolation now in China is only for 8 days rather than a 5 day rather than 10. 5 days at isolation centers plus 3 at home. Um, so yeah, so as of and I just right now, November 27th, right at 100 and the number of cases has reached almost 200,000 this last week. Okay, but we're not seeing anything. And it says what vaccines are Chinese? The Chinese are using. Um, they've been urging the elderly to get vaccinated. Which is basically the 2 doses plus the booster. Okay. The vaccines that they're using in China is the Sinovac and the Sinopharm, and which have proven to be effective against Omicron, which is the most widespread strain. Um, but here's the thing: you Xi Jinping, who's Chinese president right now, I think has really got to rethink what's going on. This shutdown, if you haven't noticed, have you had any auto work done lately, Travis?
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay, let me just so two examples. So my niece drives a Ford. What's their small and Ford Focus. So she drives a
Okay.
Ford Focus that has her transmission has an issue. It's not shifting right. It won't go out, and so she's had it in shop for. It's been in shop already 2 months. It's expected to be in shop for 6 more months. Ford has given her a rental car.
Loaner.
Yeah, it's actually a rental car,
Okay.
and the chip is not expected to be in
It's a
for
chip.
yeah, and it's from China. A friend of mine who was in a car accident back in October, or no, yes, first week of October. They drive a Chrysler or yes, a Chrysler minivan of some sort, and some of the parts, some of the body parts, and some of the computer stuff that they have to replace is from guess where? It's from China. So they're looking at possibly the week of Christmas getting the van into the shop. So when you look at this whole thing, and what's really amazing is how the Chinese people are responding to this. Okay, the people who are dying right now in China aren't the people who have COVID. It's the people who are dying in these protests. Yeah, go ahead.
I found this article here, and it's man, you got to listen to this. Okay, so this is from a CNN reporter in Lazoo City. Some
Mm-hmm.
were forced to quarantine outside in the cold in parking lots. There's a viral video apparently showing people were forced to stay in male bathrooms, sleeping under urinals. And there was one video. It says it's quarantine site for kids, and I forget what province. I can't read what province this is. A little boy was jumping on bricks to avoid the pool of dirty liquid where they were staying. This is where they used the bathroom.
Oh
This
God.
woman was crying on the ground because she was caught with her mask pulled down. The government suspended her business for 30 days, losing a month of income. Metal spikes, which this man was filming, says were installed on the compound gate to prevent residents from leaving. And it gets better. So this talk about that fire we were discussing here. Where is it at? Where is it at? Yeah, a huge fire broke out in an apartment complex in what city was that again? Urumqi,
Mm-hmm.
Urumqi. So anyway, yeah, a huge fire broke out at that apartment complex. The government had sealed most of the doors in the building, including the exit to the outside. It took firemen more than 3 hours to control the blaze, and by that time, 10 people had roasted to death inside, including a 3-year-old child.
Yep, I just was reading that same article.
Absolute
Yes,
madness.
and this can't come at a worse time though, because what are the Chinese people when they're at home? Guess what they're watching on TV? The World Cup. The World Cup that's coming from Qatar, and they
Well,
are
the government completely controls the media there.
yeah, and Chinese national teams there.
Yeah.
The Chinese national,
They're,
so they get to watch the World Cup when their guys are playing, and they're like, okay, here's hundreds of thousands of people packed into the stadium, elbow to elbow. They don't see any mask anywhere. Apparently, the rest of the world isn't concerned about it. So, you know, and two of the biggest sinners, and I was just mentioning this to Travis. Two of the biggest sinners that are facing a lot of the largest breakouts are in my two kids' hometowns,
yeah,
Chongqing
it's
and
crazy.
Shenzhen. Briley's from Chongqing and Bryson's from Shenzhen. Shenzhen is the major. For those of you who used to, if you studied it or know anything about world history, it was the old city that was known as Canton, and it's always been a major shipping center. And so Shenzhen, which is in the Guangzhou province, shut down. Chongqing, which is the largest landmass city in the world, with close to 150 some odd million people in it, is locked down. And I'm just reading a quote here. It said this was last Thursday, in the sprawling metropolis of Chongqing in the southwest. A resident delivered a searing speech criticizing the COVID lockdown on his residential compound. So he apparently, I guess, I don't know if he's a DJ or what, but he had a loud enough speakers. He said, "Without freedom, I would rather die." He shouted to a cheering crowd who hailed him as a hero. And then though he was in the compound, and the group of police tried to arrest him. So that's where it was at. So it was actually in the compound. And then you see some of these pictures that are actually coming out of China. You're seeing these videos of these people. So the Chinese police who are in these hazmat suits are making these makeshift. They're basically makeshift walls, basically with wire with what looks to be like paneling up in front of these walls. And then you see these other videos of these people trying, like you said, fighting to get out of these out of these factories, out of these stores, out of these bathrooms. It's just like, okay, when we're seeing people, whoop, let's lock them in, lock them in. We're not even going to. There's not even going to be. We're not. There's no compromise to this. I mean, what do you think is their end game in this, Travis?
Yeah, I don't know. It's is COVID really the problem? I mean, because there's been stuff that hasn't been talked about in China. Like, you remember that one thing? And I don't know if that was ever ended up being a spoof or it was legit. Remember, it was a couple months ago when there was something about like a political uprising that apparently happened in China or something,
Mm-hmm.
like, or it was like an attempted coup,
Mm-hmm.
and there was like no coverage of it. Like nothing happened. And there was actual reports of like military activity and like something happened, and like there was no discussion of it. So you could speculate that maybe this is like a cover up for China just simply trying to keep control of the population and control power, because obviously the people are fed up with it. They don't want the people to rise up.
No.
So instead of directly imprisoning their people, COVID's just a scapegoat. It's a label for it, in my opinion, because these
Well,
numbers are so minuscule.
and you're not seeing where these protests are, and so where these protests. I mean, and there's some pictures that I'm looking at. I'm looking off on my other screen here, and I'm just some of this we can't show because of copyright. But I'm just if you do just your Google searches and you go CNN and you're scrolling through and being in China, okay, seeing these empty streets is just, it's haunting to me, because there's no such thing as personal space in China. Wherever you go, you're right there to each other. And so and we should mention this, that this is, this is something that has really been going on since May in China. So but the other thing that says here, so CNBC reported on Sunday that the first COVID deaths since the May lockdown occurred and these are the ones that Travis, and so this is in the city of Shanghai. Okay. Now, you have to realize that the city of Shanghai, all right, so the southern, which is in the Guangdong province, Guangzhou, which is the province that my son is from, all right, the province reported nearly 1,000 COVID infections with symptoms and more than 8,000 who were asymptomatic. Okay. And then mainland China on, so Sunday, 26,000 COVID infections. Okay. 3 deaths reported Sunday. 3. And all 3 individuals who were between the ages of 87 and 91.
I was just about to say that. Yeah, it's the same thing that happened here in the U.S. You would hear the death, but you wouldn't hear stuff like, okay, what was their age? Was there pre-existing conditions that may have triggered that? Like, the stuff like that just gets covered up and it's a death.
This is, so to go with what you were talking about earlier too, Travis, about the underlying circumstances as to what's going on in China. I want to focus a little bit about that.
Yeah.
So there has been, within the last year, so there's been this obvious tension that's been going on within Hong Kong and Taiwan. China has been talking about reacquiring Taiwan. We actually did a show. Did we do a show this year? Yeah, we did a show on that this year. On the implications of that, which was basically Australia was ready to jump. We basically reported that Australia was on the verge of declaring war on China, and how it was kind of being, again, swept underneath the rug. Nobody's talking about it.
Well, I originally heard about that on Sky News Australia, not American news.
Yeah, and that was not right. And so, to me, as I read this, and when you talk about these areas that they're locking down, okay, these areas that they're locking down are areas where they're seeing the protests. These areas that they're locking, there's COVID in there, shut them down. Okay. And some of these cities I'm reading about here, that within Beijing, they're still allowing takeout and they're still allowing delivery. It says, what they say, November 10th, schools in 8 districts moved their classes back online for most students. Okay. Mainland China's latest wave of COVID infection has hit all 31 of the country's province-level regions. Okay. And like we said, for Sunday alone, mainland China reported more than 26,000 COVID infections with and without symptoms. Okay. So you're getting a lot of conflicting news here. All right. Where is this coming from? Why is this happening? China, to me, there's not going to be anything to gain from this. All right. Because there's too many things that I'm seeing with this. Number one thing is what happened with Taiwan. Number two thing, is this some kind of, with the way the markets are going right now, China has nothing to gain from this. Except economic disaster. They're trying to keep their workers in the factory plants. They're locking their people in the plants. We want to keep the economy going. Okay, so
To
how are
lock
you?
them up at work.
So we're going to lock them up at work. Oh, we'll feed them at work and we'll keep them at work. And then when you look at some of these
Oh my
areas
God.
where they're, and Travis, we were talking. You had posted this in the group chat. It's been a while ago, but some of these conditions where these guys are staying at. I mean, you thought our prisons were bad. Some of these apartments that these people are staying in. You know, you liken it to. You would say an American jail cell would be a lot better.
Oh, it was terrible. Yeah, I just imagine like what do we say like the square footage? What did you say the average square footage
Average
of
square foot.
apartment
Well, when
was?
we talk, the two guides that we had, one guide he was bragging about his 700 square foot apartment that he had. And the other guy had a 900 square foot apartment. So to put that into
This was like the pictures I showed you guys was like 400 square foot maybe.
maybe a
It was like a
studio.
it was like a
Yeah,
cubicle.
yeah.
It was like a little studio cubicle that had like had your bathroom, had the sink, and it had like enough room for a cot. And like that was it. Like that was the room. And like there's like multiple people living in this thing.
Yeah. So
And
if I say a
and it's
700,
imagine like a giant high rise like apartment complex.
mm-hmm.
This and that's what blows my mind. Like these cities, it's just these apartments. Like as far as the eye can see, the cities are so massive there,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the living conditions. Like you got to think millions of people are living like this. Like I think it's like I told you. Like we just people have no idea how lucky and fortunate we are here. Like they have no idea.
So the other thing that's occurring though, so with all this going on, the demonstrations which spread. So this is something else that I'm saying here. Uh, the demonstrations which spread over the weekend to Shanghai, Beijing, and elsewhere have become a show of public defiance, unprecedented since Xi Jinping came to power in 2012. Chongqing will allow close contacts of people with COVID 19 who fulfill certain conditions to quarantine at home, as city officials said. Guangzhou, which is, like I said, is near Hong Kong, also announced easing of curbs, but with record number of cases nationwide, there seems little prospect of a major U-turn in zero COVID policy. Okay, so what is at danger here? And a lot of people, and I hope it doesn't come to this, but for those who don't remember, I remember I was a teenager when this happened. I would have been a freshman in high school in 1989. The last time that you saw large scale government protest like this was in 1989 in China, which was called the Student Rebellion. And this happened in Tiananmen Square in Beijing, China. And what ends up happening is and there were tons of American reporters who were on the ground, and Chinese, the Chinese satellite services that these guys broadcast out with were shut down right before what happened in Tiananmen Square. Tiananmen Square, they shut down the signals of all these guys, and the Chinese government basically went into Tiananmen Square and kicked some butt and took names. And they wholesale wiped out a large number of Chinese students. They cleaned them out. They put American reporters up in a hotel and then shipped them out of the country. And what you see is, and I mean, if you go to China today, you will not find this on their YouTube sites. You cannot do a search for it. It will not. If you put in "student revolution" in Chinese, you will not find anything. And so, some sources that I've looked at are making the comparison between the last time that they saw Now, granted, I want to put an asterisk next to this. These protests are nothing near the scale of what they saw during Tiananmen Square. But when you look at in some of these areas where you've got 10, 20, 30,000 people gathering to protest, to us, that seems like, man, that's a lot of people. Chinese, they're not going to raise a big, they don't want it to, but at the same time, this is still a lot of people coming together to protest in a country where you don't bite the hand that feeds you. So this, I mean, what you're seeing
Just to
is,
give people an idea how brutal this was, reporters and Western diplomats on the scene estimated that at least 300 and perhaps thousands of the protesters had been killed, and as many as 10,000 were arrested.
yeah.
Just to give people an idea.
Is that your
That's
dog or
insane.
mine?
That's my dog.
Okay.
He's throwing a fit.
Okay. But what moving forward? Um, so what we're looking at though, and this is going to be something that we're going to be looking at the next couple of weeks, and we wanted to start out with China tonight, and I think we're going to be and this may carry over in the next couple of weeks, and I want you. What is amazing about this is the lack of coverage that this is getting in. This is so if you go to CNN's homepage, you go to Fox's home, you won't if I don't think I'll get in trouble for doing this. But let me just bring up CNN.com. So if we bring in
Should be
CNN.com,
fine.
it'll be it's okay. It's okay, sure. But if we bring in CNN.com here and I just scroll down the page, okay, so here is, you're not seeing anything. Okay. Now this is just as recent as Monday. Okay. CNN, you're not seeing anything until you get, and they're talking about trade issues with China right here. But we're talking about this is
Yeah, I'm looking at CNN's page right now, and I'm seeing almost nothing
there's nothing here.
regarding what's going on with
So
this.
there's nothing on that page. Okay. One other thing that you're not going to be seeing on here, and we're going to get more into this next week, give you a little bit of a teaser for next week, but you're also not going to see anything about what's going on, protests that are going on in Iran, another stronghold country. Another one that, unless, China, where China has the communist regime, Iran has a Sharia law regime, an Islamic law regime. Neither one of these are not getting talked about. I have seen, like I said, I watch a little bit of left and the right. The only thing I haven't seen anything about the Chinese thing on the right or the left. As far as Iran, and we'll talk about this, like I said, next week. I saw one guy who is actually Iranian American who has a news show on MSNBC, and it's on like at freaking 3 o'clock in the morning. And I caught a little bit of his YouTube report today is either last night or the night before last. Why aren't these things being covered? This is something we talked about in our meeting, or I don't want to say our meetings, our podcast discussions this week on our group chat. It's like, hey, what are we going to talk about? And I had known a little bit about the COVID protests, but then Travis says, well, these Iran. I was like, what's going on in Iran? I don't know of anything going on in Iran. And I start doing these searches and this thing in Iran. I'll tell you this much right now, just to touch you a little bit of homework. Just do you a little Google search and see what kind of human rights violations are going on. Do you a little search of China and what's going on right now. Again, what you're going to see, you'll get the reports from the people on the ground, but the absence of reporting is alarming. I mean, we're focused.
I will give a shout out to our boy Tucker Carlson. I think he has
God,
touched on this topic, so we got to give him a little bit credit here. He is fighting the good fight for us
yeah.
over
I
at
mean,
Fox News.
I'm sure he sunned his nuts just a little bit too much this week, and he, got a little extra
Oh
lotion on
man,
the testicles, and he was able to sunny side up and to go with it. But yeah, to me, this is,
doing the Lord's work for us.
he's doing the Lord's work. But no. Anyway, we I'm not making excuses, but Travis and I both have an early morning. We were going to do a regular show tonight, but because of our technical difficulties, we are doing an abbreviated show tonight. We will return next week with a full show on what's going on in Iran. And what is going on in Iran is very, very, it is very overwhelming. There is a ton of information that I want to cover. I actually have a guest in mind that I kind of want to bring on for this. So, yeah, we want to at least give you guys about 30 minutes tonight. And like I said, Travis gets to get up at 3. I get to get up at 4. But we are the voice of reason. Do want to thank you guys for joining us this week. Again, sorry for our technical difficulties and the fact that I am kind of handicapped, but that's okay. But and we will have Sean back with us next week. He will be off his weekend warrior status, hopefully, and will be able to join us again. Travis, anything you want to say before we call it a night?
Nope, I got nothing. We will see you guys next week.
See you guys next
Thanks
week.
for listening.
Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.